When is the summer solstice? What date's that? So we only have like 20 some, like 8 weeks before winter starts, right? Because that's when the summer solstice is. I'm glad. Beth's about the only one in here. My wife drives her crazy because I always call the summer solstice the beginning of winter, because from that day forward, the days get shorter, which what brings about winter, right? But my wife doesn't agree with my math on that, but especially it depresses her when we just got out of winter. We have Donna with us tonight, and most of you guys know she was over there in Africa with us, and she's up here for my daughter's wedding. Good to have her with us tonight. Brother Matt said that Chris's mother-in-law, Ann's mother, is unresponsive and not doing it. Andy, do you know what her name is? No. Does anybody? Does that work? Okay, all right. Well, we'll pray for her. I know Ann's been having to stay home several Sundays in the past, probably over a year now, taking care of her. And he told me on Sunday night that, it wasn't looking good. So, but they know the Lord, so I know that's going to be hard for Ann. And Ann's dad's not doing, that good either. So we'll start out the prayer request for that. So we'll put Charlotte down here. Oh, thank you. All right. All right. Anybody else tonight? Likewise. Amen. One day we get Al feeling better. He makes a mean gumbo. I've got to see it in the pot. I've never been able to taste it, but we're going to do that. Yeah, I don't know. How long were you in New Orleans, down in Louisiana, Al?
Well, I was in Louisiana and what's called Alabama Bowl, probably 8-10 years.
Okay.
But I was raised at Dutch Shoals.
So Al and I like the same food.
So we're about there together.
Amen.
The only thing is, you leave there fat and have to come up here and get skinny.
Yeah, when I lived in New Orleans, I was a lot heavier than I am now. That food like to killed me.
Tell you, it'll put it on you.
Yeah, but it'll put it on you with a smile.
Yeah, exactly.
Anybody else tonight? Any other prayer question? Okay. Okay.
My sister has the broken leg. They
Uh-huh.
did surgery last night, which went well.
Okay.
Just continue prayer for healing.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Okay. Is it Jenny C? Okay.
Hey, remember John and Francis during top prayer, they are really in bad shape, to be honest about it. They really had it tough.
Okay. I talked to John the other day, and he said that especially summer's harder on him because of breathing and stuff.
I try to visit him once a week or maybe twice, as often as I can to keep his spirit up. But sometimes it's kind of hard to get over it, but I do try to get over it.
Okay. Well, when you go next time, you let him know that we'll be praying for him here, okay? Okay. Anybody else tonight? All right. Pray for our young people. Summer's right on them. They got the whole summer off, and then it starts back up again. Graduation, seniors. Brock's a senior this year. You're done. But that's happy days, huh? And then it's You know, it gets depressing when you look back at when you graduate. It's like 33 years ago. You know, but pray for our young people, I say, the ones that are going to be heading out and, you know, going on a new chapter in life. Anybody else tonight? All right. Father, just thank you for this evening, and thank you that we can come and pray. Lord, thank you for seeing the young people over there tonight, and it's the end of Awana, but the beginning of our summer program for the kids, and pray that they would just continue on throughout the summer and meet with us as well. And thank you for the opportunity that we've had this year to share the gospel, to love on them. And Lord, I just pray that what was taught, Lord, they would hold on to it. It's a hard time growing up. It's a long way from the simplicity of years gone by. There's so much opportunity for sin on every hand, distraction, a lot more difficult to stay focused than it was years back. Lord, I pray you guard their minds. Oftentimes, summer, there's idleness, and Lord, I pray that you would be with their time off, that it would be productive, and Lord, that they would use it for your honor and glory. I pray for the ones that are graduating, Brock, as well as the others in our church that are going to start that new chapter in life. And Lord, I pray that you would give them guidance. They have to make decisions on school and careers and all those things. And Lord, I also know there's several that turn 16 this summer that will also be driving and experiencing that for the first time. And Lord, just pray that they make good decisions, that they value and hold on to what they were taught at home, and they'll practice that when no one's around. And Lord, that this would be a good summer for our young people. Lord, I thank you for being able to come here tonight, and just as we pause for just a second, ask that you would forgive us. Lord, that it's only been a couple days since Sunday. It's evident that we live in a broken world. Lord, I pray you'd help us to be conscious of our mouth and our eyes and our ears, what we say and what we do. Lord, that we would have our guard up against the world around us, that you would help each of us in our own weaknesses, and each person will have a different weakness, that you would help us as we press forward in those areas, that you would give victory so that they don't become besetting sins. And then, Lord, I just pray that you clear our mind tonight as we look at the book of Job. And Lord, I just pray as we do that and we think about eternal things and think about you, and Lord, just crave that day when we're there with you. Lord, I know that several have experienced loss over the winter of people in their lives that are not there anymore. I pray that you would continue to bring healing in those areas. And Lord, I pray for Caroline tonight, which is Ann's mom. And I know that she has been patiently and lovingly caring for them all winter. I know her dad's not feeling good, and there's a challenge there as well. And Lord, as a family comes together and they go through this, Lord, I pray that you would just be with them, that you would comfort. Lord, I know that she's a believer, and just ask, Lord, that you would bring peace to that family, help them be able to be prepared to say goodbye. It's not an easy thing, but Lord, I pray that you'd open their eyes to what lies beyond. And Lord, the connection that we have to those that we love is stronger than anything on this world. It's a connection with your spirit. It's where they're going to be, that's where we're going because of you. And Lord, I just pray that that thought might help them be able to say goodbye. Lord, but it's also a reminder that there are people who left this world today, and there will be no reunion because they did not know you. And I'm thankful for this family and their walk with you. Lord, I pray for Sally and Joan and their health. Thank you for Al being able to be here on Wednesday night and giving him the health to do that. Just last year, him and Ron were going through some things, and Lord, you saw him through that. And Lord, I pray that you'd help Al to continue to be strong, to be able to be a support to his wife and to Joan. And Lord, I pray that you'd help them in their health needs. Father, for Obi, who is faithful. If he's not here, it's an odd thing. And I know he wants to be here. And Lord, You know the health issues that he's going through. And I just pray that you'd help him. Lord, the doctors seem to not be able to figure it out, and there's complications there, and it's frustrating. But Lord, I pray you would do something for Obi that I can't do, but I know you're able to do it. Would you please help him? Would you please heal what needs to be healed, strengthen what needs to be strengthened? Lord, that you'd help his health and his kidneys, and Lord, that you'd give the doctor's guidance, decisions that he has to make. Lord, I just pray that you would be with every bit of that, and that you would give him comfort in his heart. And Lord, we love him, and I know you love him, and I pray that you would just watch out for him. Pray for John and Fran, Lord, that are sweet people, and we love them as well. And Lord, I know John's really struggled since that accident, hasn't really been able to get back to where he was. And Fran still got problems with being dizzy. And I just pray you'd help those two. Lord, that they would know that the Helenwood Baptist Church loves them and praying for them tonight. And Lord, that they would know that we're there and would be glad to help any way we can. And Lord, I pray you just comfort their heart and help their health situation. Lord, I pray for Debbie's sister's broken leg. And thank you, Lord, for the beginning of healing there. And just pray that you would be with everything that needs to go on, and that you would be with her strength and her stamina, that she would be able to get back on her feet as soon as possible. And Lord, I pray you'd help Debbie to be a blessing to her. Lord, for Jenny Seabird tonight and health needs, Lord, you know who she is and what she's going through. And Lord, just thank you for every name mentioned. There's a friend behind that name that brings them to us. We don't know them, but it's just like the guys in the Bible who grabbed a stretcher with a lame man on him. And he brought him to Jesus because he cared for the lame man, and he knew that Jesus could help him. And Lord, that's what we get to do tonight with these prayer requests of people that other people might not know, but you know. And Lord, I pray that you would be with Jenny. And Lord, I pray that you help Sherry to be a blessing, that she would find comfort to know that people are praying for her. Lord, I just pray as we on our calendar got coming up, Jake's ordination here in a few weeks. And Lord, I thank you for this young man who has felt a calling on his life, a willingness to dedicate himself wherever you need him. And Lord, I know that he's prepared himself to do that, and I pray you'd watch over him. Lord, I pray that hedge of protection that we talked about last week around this young family. And Lord, that, Lord, as, of course, we don't know what tomorrow holds, but it appears Jake's got his future ahead of him, and Lord, I just ask that you would use him, that you would, Lord, help him to draw close to you, give him the ability beyond what a human can do. And Lord, I'm looking forward, Lord, to be able to get behind him as a church and see what you're going to do with this young family. And Lord, I just pray that you would be with the school as they close out, the teachers as they say goodbye to their kids. Some of them will experience things over the summer that is going to really be hard on them. And Lord, I pray that you would be with each and every one of them and that you would guide them back again. Thank you, Father, for living in a county that has so many teachers that it's a blessing to know that they carry God in the classroom with them. I pray you'd watch over them. I know they build bonds with their kids, and although I'm sure they're glad for summer that they'll miss these kids, these kids are prayed for by these teachers. They carry the burdens of their home. And I just pray that you would be with the closing of the school year. We love you. Thank you for being patient and kind to us. We ask this in your precious name. Amen. Have your Bibles tonight. We're going to go to the book of Job, chapter 2. And like I said last week, probably one of the most read chapters for me. Just a bit of encouragement. If you've never read the Bible all the way through, it's not a magic thing. I wish I could tell you if you read it through, you'd quit sinning, but you won't. You'll just know a little bit more about your sin how to fix it the more you read it. It's not a one and done thing. You read it once, you ought to just, go on that journey and do it again, and then you ought to do it again, and you ought to do it again. But I hope that you've at least tried to go through it once. It's, we talk about it holding the keys to life, kind of difficult to prove that if we don't read it, right? So it's a privilege to be able to go through these books, at least knock off a few different books during the year. Job chapter 2. Now, did I turn this thing on? I know I put it on. I don't know if I turned it on. Round 2, round 2, verse 1. And there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. Now, I'm not going to get off on this. I'm just going to mention it. Genesis chapter 6, very interesting chapter. In Genesis chapter 6, you have that weird name, Anephilah. So it's when the sons of God marry the daughters of men. Someday we'll tackle that chapter. Maybe I'll just do that chapter instead of going through the whole. We just did Genesis in our Bible study, so I won't do it out here anytime soon. But the reason why I mention that is because you have the same thing here. Now, one of the theories are that fallen angels or angels themselves actually had a relationship with human beings on this earth. That's the thought. Now, when you crank open a commentary, you will get that along with 10 other things. It's very interesting when you read it. We know going forward, just so you wrap your mind around this a little bit, going forward, the history that lies in front of us is going to look more like a Marvel movie than anything that you would recognize. There will be supernatural beings. The beast will be a supernatural being. The false prophet will also be a supernatural being. There are going to, you know for sure when we're gone, the alien conspiracy is going to be out there. So the thought is that that's one of the reasons why God destroyed everybody but Noah and his family in the flood, is to also cleanse the bloodline from this Anephilah. We know that whoever the sons of God were, that when they married the daughters of men, there was a genetic difference because you had giants, like really big giants. Now you say, well, okay, what does that matter? It seems like in the beginning that the spiritual world, or the world that we can't see, interacted with this world a little bit more than what we can see now, right? As that time comes and God raptures us out of here, you're going to see a return to that, okay? Spirits and those things are going to be much more involved than what you see them today. And not just read the book of Revelation. I mean, they pretty much accept that, right? That the leaders in the book of Revelation are not going to be human. And that's, you can't argue that. So it wouldn't be odd to say. And now, one theory to that Anephilah thing is that they're wiped out. Some people believe that race is still out there. And, it blames other things on it. But the only reason why I mentioned that is because it says here, again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. If Satan came, then we know when he left heaven, 1/3 of all the angels left with him, right? So if he went back to heaven, did they go back to heaven? And when they said the sons of God, we know that they are angels, but they're also the fallen angels as well. And we know that Satan walked on this earth with Job. The Bible says he went up and down the earth, but you couldn't see him. Just remember, he's here. He's here way more than you think he's here. This is his world, okay? God made it. It's only on rent till him. He's going to get it back. But he definitely is the father of this world at this present time. Okay, so he is much more involved. We talked last week, I believe he's involved in politics. Just like God uses people to do his will, Satan will use people to do his will. Just like God can speak to you, Satan does the same thing to people that are not saved. And the Lord said unto Satan, from whence comest thou? And Satan said, answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And the Lord said unto Satan, hast thou considered my servant Job? There is none like him in the earth, a perfect and an upright man, one that feareth God and escheweth evil. And still he holdeth fast his integrity, although thou movest me against him to destroy him without cause. He's saying, even though, now look, God did not give in to Satan's demand. God was not intimidated by Satan's demand. When presented that question, God simply had the faith in a human being. And it is scary because I would not want, could you handle that kind of test? That God would actually say to, even if it's a lesser demon, a lesser evil spirit, maybe not the big guy, but a lesser one, and say, listen, why don't you tempt David today? He won't take the bait. Ugh. You know, that's a little scary, right? I mean, this is a good man. Listen, he was still a sinner. He wasn't perfect, okay? But he was a good man. And God trusted him to know that he would do the right thing, and that Job really did love him, and it wasn't conditional to the fact that he took care of him. Why is that important? Why would God say the only reason why Job loves you is because you gave him money? Why is that important to God? You got to go back to that tree of the knowledge of good and evil. As this supernatural tree. It was a tree, but on that tree, just next to the tree of life, they were supernatural trees. A tree that if you eat off the one fruit, you live forever. Right? That's supernatural. That was in a garden. Existed with fruit that we would eat today, but there was a tree there that if you ate it, you would live forever. Right next to it is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Why put that there? Because Satan's whole thing, and you can take it with this thing with Job, the whole thing is this. They have a choice. That you're a dictator. You run this thing. You don't give anybody a choice. You do what you want. So, of course, the angels got to follow you, you know? And so when God made man, what did he do? He put that tree. You can't overlook that tree. That tree of the knowledge of good and evil was one of the biggest things that happened in the Bible. You leave that tree out, none of this happens that way. That was a choice. Okay? Are you going to obey God for who he is? Or are you going to disobey him? It's the same thing he's saying now. They're only doing it, Job's only doing it because there's no choice. You know, so what did God do in his life? And the reason why that is important in any relationship, relationships are built because of a mutual understanding, agreement, and love forms a relationship. If I don't have the ability to love God, I'm just a benign being. I don't have anything to offer. Put a choice in there, and it changes. I can actually be God's friend. Can't do that without a choice. Without a choice, you're just like the angels, and they're mass-produced by the millions. He wanted somebody that would be like him. I mean, you can't get any more unique than a human being in the world. He wanted somebody like him. So the choice had to be there. Satan's just bringing up what we already read back in the book of Genesis. Verse 4, and Satan answered the Lord and said, skin for skin, yea, all that a man hath will he give for his life. But put forth thine hand now and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse thee to thy face. Now, the reason why this is important is how did Jesus save the world? He came down here and he put on a human body. And in a human body, the human body it had the same kind of reaction in our body. He did not have a sin nature, but he did have human flesh. It gets tired. You know, God kind of built into to us preservation of life. You know, it's funny. You know, you ever drive an older car, you have comprehensive insurance, and you're thinking, if that deer pops out and I hit him, I can get a new car. You know, it's really hard not to hit the brakes. In your mind, you're thinking, I'm just going to tag this thing and, you know, roll it over the hood and make an insurance claim, right? But it's difficult. Why? Because you're not supposed to hit things. So you got stuff in your mind. It's hard to do that, to do it on purpose, because God's got you built up there so you can't be stupid, right? I mean, you have to override a lot of common sense to do that. So Jesus, when he was here, you know, it was not an easy or benign thing for him to give his life, and no more than it would be for you. And what he's saying is this: a man will save himself before he obeys you. If it's a choice between his health and you, he's going to pick his health. What did Jesus say? For a righteous man, some would peradventure die. That it was an odd thing. And what did Jesus do? He came and he did just the opposite of that. And you know what? There have been countless people who have proved Satan wrong over and over again and did exactly what Satan said that you wouldn't do, who lay down their life for the cause of Christ. And that's what he's talking about here. Verse 5, and Satan answered the Lord and said, skin for skin, yea, all that a man hath will he give for his life. But put forth thine hand now and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse thee to thy face. And the Lord said unto Satan, behold, he is in thine hand, but save his life. So went Satan forth from the presence of the Lord and smote Job with sore boils from the sole of his foot unto his crown. Now understand, Satan is an enemy. He is not on God's side. God is still in control. Satan can't disobey him. God would have stopped him for taking Job's life. If he tried, his power was held back by the power of God. As soon as God said it, I mean, he couldn't do it. Even if he wanted to do it, he had to obey. It's not that he said, okay, yes, sir, I'll honor who you are. I guarantee if he thought he could do it, he'd have done it. His power couldn't go past the power of God. The power of God, you know, maybe even an angel of God stood there and said, this is as far as you go. You don't go any further. You're allowed to do this and this. And if not, we'll replay that battle that happened in heaven, right? You know, so he's saying, I just like that, because understand, God is still 100% in charge of Satan today and this world. We're not down here by ourselves, right? What happens, it happens because he allows it to happen. And we know we're going to be okay. We do not have to fret. We don't have to be concerned. We can go to bed at night and rest assured that whatever happens in November, God's still on the throne and he's in charge. And that's okay. Because if he can tell Satan what to do, I'm sure he can tell a president what to do. So when Satan, so he smote them with boils, and he took him a potsherd to scrape himself withal, and he sat down among the ashes. Then said his wife unto him, dost thou still retain thine integrity? Curse God and die. You know, it's that's a good stopping off it when you talk about marriage or a relationship. You know, that when you're going through a battle, the last thing you need is somebody that's close to you telling you there's no hope. I mean, the worst thing you can do to any human being is present a problem and tell them there's no hope. Because a human has to have hope. Yeah, that's you hold on to that. You know, somebody say, you know, in a marriage, somebody will say, well, you'll never change. We should try not to say those words, because you're limiting God. It doesn't matter how many times somebody has repeated something. Just know this, that any human being allows God to do a work in their life can get out of any ditch they're in, no matter what it is. You may see them fail 100 times, but then to go into that person and say, why are you even trying? Why don't you just give up? Why don't you just quit? Shows you where her spiritual state is and why God didn't say, hey, did you ever consider Job's wife? Right? Now, that's not a slam on women. It just happened to be a woman here. There's plenty of godly women in the Bible that are way more godly than me. But in this particular thing, she's not where Job is at all. Difficult to serve like that when you're not on the same page. It's difficult. When a husband and wife's on the same page, it's a blessing from God. When one has to come to church without the other, it's hard. It's hard. That's why young people today, if you are looking to get married and you don't pick somebody who faithfully goes to church on their own, then you're probably going to have to work at it later on. It should be something that they want to do. It's very difficult to go in there and then be a preacher to your spouse. Doesn't work really well, right? But if they can have that in their heart themselves, she wasn't there. Sometimes we can say, when somebody comes and shows a little bit of humility, and the next thing you do is just bite back after that, then the other person says, what's the use? Why am I even trying? There's no sense in working at this. They're always going to be that way, and just move on. And I'm sure Satan had a little bit to do behind manipulating that. But he said unto her, thou speakest as one of the foolish women speaketh. I'm sure that went over really well, but it was the truth. But he said unto her, thou speakest as one of the foolish women speaketh. What shall we receive good at the hand of God, and shall we not receive evil? So today, in the generation that's coming up, they don't want to be uncomfortable at all. They think that everything has to smell like roses, that every day has to be a good day. And here's what you don't understand. Christ himself suffered for us. And in the fact that if we only serve God on good days, do we not prove Satan right? Remember what this is all about? Well, he only loves you because you do this. But it's something else for a human being to say, I don't love you for your money. I don't love you for your looks. By the way, both of those change in life, right? Okay, gravity starts taking an effect, and things wear out, money goes. You don't love somebody for their money. You don't love somebody for their looks. You love somebody for their heart and who they are. And what he's saying is, we don't take good from God and only love him because of the good. And if you want to make a difference in this world and the people around you, and so you wonder why bad things happen to good people, because God's doing something. He doesn't want just 10 people in heaven. He wants the world to know about him. And as you and I navigate those hard areas in our life, those areas where it's just, we're now having to walk through the bad, okay? And as walking through that bad, but you still love God, what you're showing to the world around you is that he really is real, and that you love him for who he is, not what he can do for you in this world. It's not just because he takes care, but because who he is. That's why we love him. Without those difficult times that he uses, and you will have them, and they'll come and go. It'll be my turn one week and your turn the next. Maybe we'll both do it at the same time some weeks, but it'll come. And it's unpleasant, but then it's God. So this week, I was in touch with the college that I graduated from. It's still operating, and I needed to talk to the guy who runs the place. So I was trying to find his number. And so he's only about 8 years older than me. And when I was trying to find his number on Facebook, I realized last year in 2023, his daughter died. She was 25 years old. She was carrying a baby. The baby was 6 months old. And the guy that she was with shot and killed the mom, and the baby died. Now, I talked to him today. I had probably a 20, 30-minute conversation with him. Of course, I did not mention that. When I hung up the phone, I just thought, hey, he's doing okay. Told me last year him and his wife went to Israel, told me what they had planned this year. He doesn't know that I know that his world got rocked. Rocked. Bad. And he's still pressing on. You know, he picked his life up and he's living it for God. And what that does, she's home safe. She was a believer. She made it, she's home now. He knows he's going to see her again. And everywhere he goes, he's able to say, is your faith real? And they're able to look at that and say, yes, it is real. Well, how can you smile? Why aren't you on some kind of depression medicine? Why aren't you going? And listen, I'm not knocking counselors or anything like that, but I promise you this. You got a pretty good one right there. Not necessarily Jake, but the book he's holding. You got one on your lap. I mean, if you need to, do you know you can tell him and he ain't going to tell anybody? Right? I mean, you can just go sit alone with him and cry. I mean, you can lean on him just like John leaned on him. You know, if you're not able to tap that, then you need to go back and work on that relationship so you feel comfortable that you can lean on him like that. But you ought to be able to do that. You know? Now, if a person needs that, I'm not a doctor and I'm not going to knock it. I'm just saying that the reason why he's telling us his wife is that this is when God shines in those dark moments. You know, even in God's, here he is. He's got boils all over him and he's got to take his wife to Sunday school, right? She's still on the bottle, you know. I mean, he's navigating that and he's navigating this at the same time. But he said unto her, thou speakest as one of the foolish women speaketh. What shall we receive good at the hand of God, and shall we not receive evil? And all this did not Job sin with his lips. And when Job's 3 friends heard of all this evil that was come upon him, they came every one from his own place. Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, Zophar the Naamathite. Now, these 3 guys are going to take center stage from here. Very interesting guys. Now, these are Job's friends. He had lots of them. And listen, it's just like in our life. You know, these are not just casual people in Job's life. These are people that were in his inner circle. And they care about him or they wouldn't be sitting there. But sometimes when we give advice, we can also be very wrong. There are many times that we've misread something, judged when we shouldn't have judged, you know, thought that was a reason when it wasn't a reason. And so that's the same thing that's going to be happening here. You know, here's a lesson. When you come to church for yourself. When you walk through that door, try not to think about anybody else in this room but you. Because that's what you're here for. You're not here for your neighbor to get right. You're not here for you're here for you. Okay? And if we come for that, because oftentimes church ends up being like these 3 friends. That's what it ends up being like. Everybody's got an opinion. You know, good deal at the time, it's wrong, right? Now, they mean well. You know, if they wanted to be a friend, then going and telling them why. Now, here's something that I've got. Do you know you don't always have to fix it? Human nature, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. I want to fix it. Sometimes it doesn't need fixed. Sometimes I just need to listen. Sometimes I don't need to have an answer. I just got to care. Sometimes they don't want my opinion. They just want my company, right? And sometimes it's okay to be quiet. It's a hard lesson to learn who somebody who talks for a living, to know that sometimes even I can talk too much, say too much. Do you know you can care too much? Sure you can. Sometimes you just need to sit there. And sometimes you need to carry that burden. Carrying that burden doesn't mean figuring out how to solve it. It means coming beside them, putting your shoulder under what he's carrying and saying, hey, Job, I brought you some ointment for those boils today. If you need me to, I can get your feet for you. Probably hard for you to reach that. And just let them talk. Right? So these three friends, and I don't know if you've ever gone through the book of Job, but it gets really interesting. They're each one going to speak, and they're going to say what they think. See, they think that God's punishing Job, that certainly he's got some hidden sin, something out there that God's doing this. No, but this doesn't happen to somebody without there being a righteous cause of God, and they're dead wrong. You know, of course, we get to know that because we had the whole thing in front of us. And they lifted up their eyes afar off and knew him not. They lifted up their voice and wept, and they rent every one his mantle and sprinkled dust upon their head towards heaven. Now that part they're doing right. They're getting in there, and they're suffering with him. So they sat down with him upon the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and none spake a word unto him, for they saw that his grief was great. After this, Job opened his mouth. Now I got about 10 minutes, and I'll see if we can get through a little bit of this, and we'll be done. And after this, opened Job his mouth and cursed his day. So now Job's going to talk, and Job is he's not sinning, but he's not in a good spot, right? Do you know that they're not used to the mood he's in? They've not seen him ever be like this. Can I tell you something? Every one of us are human. And you will have a day like that. Whether I see it or I don't see it, you will still feel just like this. Right? And because in my own humanity, I can identify with that, I also should give you a lot of grace. You know, because, he's talking out of his head for sure. And after this, Job opened his mouth and cursed his day. Listen to this wording that he used. And Job spake and said, let the day perish when I was born, and the night in which was said, there is a man-child conceived. You talk about a literary classic. This chapter and how he writes this about wishing, he could have just said, I wish I was never born. But he's going to burn a lot of adjectives describing how bad he wished he wasn't born. Let that day be darkness. Let not God regard it from above. Neither let the light shine upon it. Let darkness and the shadow of death stain it. Ooh. Let a cloud dwell upon it. Let the blackness of the day terrify it. As for that night, let darkness seize upon it. Let it not be joined in the days of the year. Let it not come into the number of the months. Lo, let that night be solitary. Let no joyful voice come therein. Let them curse it that curse the day, who are ready to rise up their morning. Let the stars of the twilight therefore be dark. Let it look for light, but have none. Neither let it see the dawning of the day. Because it shut not up the doors of my mother's womb, nor hid sorrow from mine eyes. Big question. Why died I not from the womb? Well, you know why he's saying that? Do you don't think the God of heaven knows about abortion? Job knew that there's another way out. To be conceived but not born. And what do you miss? Vanity is vanity. All is vanity. Do you believe babies go to heaven that were conceived and never born? A woman miscarries. Is that baby in heaven? Well, absolutely. Because you know that from the wording that he says here. He says, why did I not die in my mother's womb? How can something not alive die? Right? And what he was saying is, I would miss all the struggles of life, and I would be in heaven. I wouldn't have to go through this down here. You know, it's kind of a little bit of look into the grace of God when it comes to abortion. Yes, today, somebody got an abortion today, somewhere. And you may never know this, but it would not be abnormal for a church our size at some point in life have somebody visit or there now that has had an abortion. I mean, the more that I learn about my mom's generation, I realize that some of it wasn't all just the good old days, right? Sin still existed. You never know what somebody carries. But God still loves them, and he loves those babies. And God's grace can make sense out of something like that. Why? Well, although that's terrible that a baby gets aborted, but think about what that baby missed. The sin that he never did. Being in heaven, having never disappointed God. A life that was alive, but never had to walk in this filthy world. Didn't have to see the pain and the suffering around it. And even in something ugly like abortion, you can see a lot of grace. You know, so he says, I wish, why died I not from the womb? Why did I not give up the ghost when I came out of the belly? Now, that's pretty cool. Because you notice he is acknowledging that a man is a spirit who lives in a human body. So, why did the knees prevent me? Why did the knees prevent me, or why the breast that I should suck? For now should I have lain still and been quiet. I should have slept, then had I been at rest. Well, that's something else to tell you. If he'd have been at rest, what he's saying, he'd be in heaven. Okay? When with kings and counselors of the earth, which built desolate places for themselves, or the princes that had gold, who filled their houses with silver, or as a hidden untimely birth, I had not been as infants which never saw the light. Again, identifying that these are real people. They just never saw the light down here. Because if God gives a soul on conception, they're as much alive as I am. It says, there the wicked cease from troubling, and there the weary be at rest. You know what he's talking about? Where are you at rest? In heaven. There the prisoner rests together. They hear not the voice of the oppressor. Talking about, hey, that's life after death in Job. The small and great are there. That's small and great in stature, small and great in number, small and great as kids and babies. The small and great are there, and the servant is free from his master. You could preach on heaven right here. Out of this little dark thing that he's doing about wishing he wasn't dying, he's giving us quite an insight. The small and great are there from the servant is free from his master. Wherefore is light given to him that is in misery, and life unto the bitter in soul, which long for death, but it cometh not, and dig for it more than for hid treasures, which rejoice exceedingly and are glad when they can find the grave. Wow. Do you realize we all talk about, I'm homesick. I forget that song that we sing, Beulah Land. Look what he says. Which long for death, but it cometh not, and dig for it more than for hid treasure. Why? Because we believe there's something better. Look at this. Which rejoice exceedingly and are glad when they can find the grave. That as Christians, we rejoice and are glad when we can find that grave. When that day comes and we can call it quits? You know, I mean, that's pretty cool if you stop and think about what he's talking about. He's saying the grave's a good place. You know, he says that's the liberation of my soul. You know, why is light given to a man whose way is hid, and whom God hath hedged in? For my sighing cometh before I eat, and my roarings are poured out like the waters. For the thing which I greatly feared is come upon me, and that which I was afraid of is come unto me. Now, worrying about the future is a human thing, and Job never had to worry about that. So, you know, you guys know that, that I have a son that I would classify as a prodigal. When I was 25, 30, 35, 40, I did not see that coming. I had him in church every single, I mean, he wasn't any different than your kids growing up here. Knows the Bible. But boy, I certainly talked to a lot of kids that had prodigals. A lot of them. I'd hear their stories, and I thought I understood until one of mine went away. And then it has a whole new meaning. It's something that you don't want to happen. Well, you wouldn't wish it on your enemy. But now it's my turn to walk with hundreds of moms and dads. They go to bed at night and say, please, somewhere out there, remember my kid. And that's what he's doing here now. He's saying, I watched other people lose it all. And now the thing that I secretly hoped would never happen to me has happened to me. And it's causing him to think everything. You know, he's having to rethink it all. You know, do I really trust God? And he did. You know, I mean, it's one thing to sing on the mountaintop, but if you never ever go through the valley, that song is empty. You go through that valley, that mountaintop is precious, precious, precious land. I mean, but if all your whole life's on the mountaintop, you know, people say, I'm not proud of the fact that I didn't get saved till later in life, and boy, I made some mistakes, and I hate it because I got baggage. I don't like baggage. My hope is for Jake's generation and those that come after him that please avoid the potholes. It's a heavy suitcase to carry. Not an ugly one at that. But you know, people will say, there is some truth in this. God would not have wanted me to experience the things that I experienced in my younger life when I was not walking for God. God would not have, he would have rather me I avoid that. But there is a value in coming out of that I can sympathize a little bit with somebody else who has walked that dark road. And I can tell them there's light at the end. That's what I can tell them. Also keeps me humble. I'm reminded every day I'm a sinner saved by grace. Helps me to be a little bit more, but if I was always, always good, and if everything was always, always good, wouldn't be a help to anybody. And so Job's going to dive into that with his friends, and they're going to start talking and give a commentary on why that happens. Interesting book. Brother Al, would you close us in prayer? Yeah.